like to open the meeting, and we will go through roll call as to who's here.
Shepherd here.
Up here.
Irving is here.
Royce here.
We'll give a couple minutes for a fifth member to arrive. So we'll recess until then. I can update you all on the select board meeting from Monday night. So at the select board meeting on Monday night, it was the budget public hearing and the warrant public hearing. Hopefully the only one necessary. There's still 6 days for petitioned articles. And if a petitioned article raises any money, if a financial warrant article, you have to hold a hearing on that. So we would have to hold a hearing on probably the 20th of January if we received a financial petition warrant article. But anyways, at that meeting, the select board took their recommendation votes on all of the warrant articles and also reviewed the recommendation narratives in the voter guide. The select board unanimously recommended all of the articles that they are sponsoring, which is pretty typical along process of negotiation and getting to compromise there. So they're recommending all of those articles unanimously. Right now, there are 3 petitioned articles. There are the 2 that were submitted together for the Swains Lake invasive species. It applies to any lake with public access over 100 acres, which probably means Swains and Ayers, but the language is kind of ambiguous, so it's, we don't know exactly. But anyways, there's 2 articles that were submitted for that initiative. One to reduce the land use change tax from 75% going to conservation to 50%. And then a separate article to establish a invasive species capital reserve and deposit initially $50,000 into it. So the reason those 2 articles were submitted together, because the net or the positive impact of the reducing land use change tax is equal to the negative impact of that capital reserve. So the primary petitioner, who's Ron Allard, member of the planning board and participant in the Swains Lake Association, wanted to be able to present something to voters that had a net zero tax impact, property tax impact. So that's the motivation there. The select board unanimously did not recommend either one of them. For the land use change tax, they felt that the 75% going to conservation was appropriate and that there are conservation priorities in town that the Conservation Commission should be responsible for and have those dollars for.
Are we going to vote on both?
Yes.
And one other thing though, if that were to go through, then how would that be funded in the future? I mean, if it's funded now by the reduction.
Well, it's not funded by the reduction, and that's why there are 2 articles. It's because it's in conversation, you can say, hey, we're reducing this, which will result in a surplus of revenue, right, and then we're adding to the capital reserve, which is directly offsetting. Right. But as you all know, those are projections. Like the $50,000 going in is the number. We
Depending on
project.
the variable from year to year, I think
Yeah,
that's what
well,
Bill's.
that's
hoping
my
But
for.
we
point, is
project
in the
land use
future.
change tax, exactly. And it would have to be a separate article every year to
Right.
add to that invasive species capital reserve. And so, yeah, there's no guarantee, there's no guarantee in that. Unfortunately, in state law, there's no mechanism to put land use change tax penalties, deposit those dollars anywhere other than general fund revenue by default, or if approved by voters, a portion, all or a portion into the conservation fund. So those are like the only two options. I think the primary petitioner would have preferred to just take that money and automatically direct whatever is raised into some fund for the purpose. And to that end, he had drafted a petitioned article initially, which would force the Conservation Commission to use a portion of the conservation fund for the purpose. The problem is state law doesn't allow that. Do you mind checking on the voter guides, the printed voter guides? State law doesn't allow that. And so it would have been an advisory only article, which, you know, they have their place, but he wanted something that could be tangible, you know, could be enforced.
So the way it reads now is it's going to be permanently taking away from the conservation fund.
Future revenues, a portion of future revenues. Yep. But the appropriation into the capital reserve is one time. And
Right.
just like all other capital reserves, any future contribution would have to be one time. Now, you know, the select board has not opined if one, so the capital reserve article is contingent on passage of the reduction of land use change tax article. So if the reduction from 75 to 50 doesn't go through, then the capital reserve, even if it passes, won't go into effect because it's contingent. So that was the primary petitioner's way of making sure that there wouldn't end up being a tax rate impact.
Would that fund exist with a zero balance? Or it just wouldn't exist at
It just
all?
wouldn't exist at all.
Okay.
Yep. So the select board hasn't opined if both articles did pass, would the select board in future years, bless you, sponsor contributions to that capital reserve? It's unknown.
But what could happen is it's just a permanent, essentially extended decrease.
Yep. Yes, I mean, that would be,
He's getting another one.
it just, yeah, they're 42 pages, so it only goes so fast. It would be 50% until changed. I wrote in the history, and this can be found on page 27. The history of the land use change tax going to conservation fund. It first started in 1999 that Barrington voters authorized 50% of the land use change tax to be deposited into the conservation fund. So starting in 99, it was 50%. And then in 2015, voters increased it to 75%. And it's stayed that way since 2015. So, I mean, it's not like it's been 75% forever. And certainly in recent years, the land use change tax collections have been much higher than historical numbers.
Partly because of next door.
Oh, yeah. Yep. So anyways, those two articles, like I said, are the select board unanimously did not recommend either one of them. For the capital reserve, the select board does feel that protection of our lakes is a priority, but they'd like to see a more cooperative approach that involves the Conservation Commission and find a way to meet both priorities without pulling from a revenue source for the Conservation Commission to do this. And the Conservation Commission, a representative of the Conservation Commission spoke at the public hearing and said that they are open to having representatives from the Swains Lake Association come to a meeting and talk about maybe a matching fund program where they match local funds for mitigation up to a certain amount. But that hasn't happened as of yet. So.
And Richardson's Dam, they're paying half of that?
They're paying 65% of Richardson Pond Dam.
So they don't have $842,000.
No, and we just spent over 175,000 last week or the week before.
175 went to the two conservation projects by Selt over by Ayers Lake. And then, yes, I'll have to look up the encumbered amount for some of that 65% of the total project they've already spent on engineering and design and stuff. But yes, they have a good portion of that is encumbered. So anyways, and then the last article, petitioned article, was there's a petitioned article to increase the service-connected total disability credit from $4,000 to $5,000. And this is as a result of legislation that was signed into law last year. So the House Bill 99, one of the things that it did is it clarified that the veteran credit and the all veteran credit should not be stacked. A veteran eligible for the service-connected total disability credit should not receive both credits. They should just receive the more generous credit, which is the service-connected total disability credit, which in Barrington and many other communities, both of them were provided to service-connected total disability veteran recipients. And so at the same time, what the legislature did is they increased the maximum allowed amount for the service-connected total disability credit from $4,000 to $5,000. And I think that's in recognition that for some communities where these are stacked, this could be a reduction in the credit that these folks receive. And so we want to increase the allowance so that it could be increased. So the select board considered it a couple of times this year, once over the summer and once this fall. And every year, as you may know, they prepare an exemption and credit analysis, which looks at all of our exemptions and credits and how they compare to both the county and the state averages. And what they found is that the county average service-connected total disability credit is like $2,300. And the state average is like $1,800. And so they felt that at $4,000, Barrington has set itself apart for the generosity of the service-connected total disability credit. And so they did not sponsor an article. We did receive a petitioned article bringing it to the 5,000, and the select board voted 4-1 not to recommend it. So one member voted to recommend it, and that was Dannon, and his perspective was there's 56 recipients, it's $56,000. It's not really, a significant amount of money, and Barrington has historically aimed to provide the maximum of the service-connected total disability credit. It used to be $2,000. We offered $2,000. It went up to $4,000. We incrementally brought it up to $4,000, and so that recommendation is 4-1 not to recommend.
And Barrington is already more generous than most towns?
It
Yes.
is.
Yep.
You got a typo in the selectmen comments, by the way.
I rewrote some of it, which is the bringing. Yeah, the brining. Yeah. So with 2025 data, there are fewer than 10% of towns and cities in the state that provide the maximum for both the service-connected total disability credit and the veteran credit. And Barrington is among those less than 10%. So that's, 20 cities and towns in the entire state that provide the maximum for both. Obviously, we don't know how many communities will increase, from 4,000, but that was the majority select board perspective.
Are there income criteria that they have to meet?
No.
That's just disability.
So they have to be totally and permanently disabled from service.
How about on the other one?
On the veteran credit, Barrington provides what's called the all veteran credit. The state has provisions for a veteran credit, an optional veteran credit, and an all veteran credit. And the differences in those have to do with, like, the veteran credit, for example, you have to have participated in combat in order to be eligible for that credit. The other one, you have to be retired. You have to be a retired veteran to be eligible. The all veteran credit is available to everybody who served, as long as they were honorably discharged, to include folks who are currently serving. And so the state allows you to have different credit levels for each of those. credit amounts. Barrington provides $750, which is the maximum allowed for the all veteran credit, which applies to the most people. So there are some criteria, and we review, when they submit an application, we review a copy of their DD 214 to verify their eligibility.
Can I go back to the land use tax?
Yes.
So did Ron talk to the Conservation Commission at all before putting together the article?
Yes.
And do you know the nature of those discussions? I'm guessing they weren't positive, which is why.
I've heard multiple stories from both sides, and it hasn't been a new idea from, I will say, the lake community. Years ago, I talked to leadership in the Swains Lake Association about a similar topic: how to find local funds for invasive species mitigation. And my understanding at that time is that there were conversations with the Conservation Commission and things fizzled out. Most recently, when Mr. Allard approached me with this idea for a petition warrant article to accomplish this purpose, I asked him, as a courtesy, I asked him if he was willing, prior to submitting a petitioned article, to see if the select board was interested or the Conservation Commission interested in doing something cooperatively. I explained that I think that's good government, and there's plenty of time to still submit a petitioned article. And so we actually, on September 23rd, we had a joint meeting between the select board and the Conservation Commission, and one of the agenda items was this invasive species topic, and Ron participated. He showed up, he was an invited guest, and he explained what he was trying to do, and he left that meeting, which you can watch the meeting online. He left that meeting with very little confidence that the Conservation Commission was interested in involving itself financially in the treatment of invasive species at a scale or magnitude that he felt like was necessary or appropriate. At one point, there was talk about starting small with like a $5,000 contribution to a capital reserve. And I think Mr. Allard left that meeting feeling like those are too small of steps to be taking to address this concern. So I don't know, I don't believe there have been conversations outside of that, to your point, but we were able to get a joint meeting together, and that's all on the record.
They don't need the money in 2026, right? There's no treatment planned.
I do not know.
You know how big their savings are now?
I do not know.
It's pretty substantial, last I heard.
The Swains Lake Association?
They've been paying down a lot of money.
I do not know.
Donate to that. And do we know what's happening at the state? I'm just trying to look. I've heard that there's invasive species, something going on there. Do you know if there's something there?
So the state plays a very active role in the monitoring, the education, and in some cases the treatment of invasive species. So my understanding of the state's program for treatment is that they participate in a diminishing capacity for the treatment of invasive species. So one year they contribute a certain amount percentage, the next year lesser percentage, and then in future years it's all local responsibility. And so
because they did something a few years ago, right?
Correct. Yeah.
This milfoil is
primarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
It keeps coming back.
So there are a few. So it's lake health. Lake health is a complicated topic, and I think the primary target for these petitioned articles is milfoil, but Swains Lake and Nippo have both also experienced. Oh yeah, no problem. Cyanobacteria issues, which the cause of those is much more frequently runoff from the either septic systems or fertilization for ornamental lawns, et cetera. And so the town, for its purpose, secured a grant through the Piscataqua Region Estuaries Partnership. And we're going through a process right now to develop basically a lakefront septic ordinance that evaluates how we can institute regulations in Barrington that promotes to the runoff lake health, which would help with cyanobacteria issues or any nitrate or phosphate loading that happens in the lakes, which causes other problems. And so, yeah, so those are two kind of like different things. The town is kind of taking an active role in one in what we can do to regulate because we have authority to regulate. On the financial side, the town hasn't historically participated in any invasive species treatment activities. And so this is a new idea, new proposal. Well,
Shall we get on with the?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to have 5 members, so we can take votes out of 4, if folks are comfortable with that. Should we do the minutes first, Mr. Chair?
Yes, like to offer a motion that we accept the minutes from November 25th.
Second?
All in favor?
Shepherd, aye.
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 Okay, now I would recommend we take recommendation votes next. If you're interested in the printed draft of the voter guide, if you go to the second page, which is the table of contents, I would recommend by default that we would take separate recommendation votes on each of the 3 petitioned articles.
I agree.
But I would ask if you look from the operating budget, which shows on page 7, down to the disabled exemption going, the income limit for single going from 30,000 to 36,000, which is on page 26. If there are any of those articles that a member would like to vote on separately, or plainly, if a member wants to vote no on any of those articles, we can pull those off, and then any that aren't pulled off, we can vote on collectively. If you're comfortable with that, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I thought we had already voted on the operating budget.
Well, so that was to finalize and give to the select board. So this is the recommendation vote, which will be recorded on the ballot.
Okay.
Because now it's been finalized by the select board at the hearing last night. Now, of course, there haven't been changes. Well, so let's talk about this. Let's talk about this because nothing has changed. So what we typically do in a typical process, the ABC will finalize their recommendations to the select board, which is what we did on the 25th, and we took recommendation votes. Okay, this is how we're sending this on to the select board. Now, built into the process, there's always the opportunity for the select board to make changes, and then at the hearing, there's the opportunity for them to make changes. And so we have typically recorded recommendation votes again or separately at kind of this stage of the process. Whereas nothing has changed and we had 5 members at that meeting on the 25th and we took recommendation votes, we could carry those recommendation votes for the articles that existed at that time, which wouldn't include any of the petitioned articles, right?
Where the keynote?
Well, the ABC doesn't vote on those.
Oh, good.
Because it doesn't have a financial impact.
But should we then just vote after the deliberative session?
Can't do that because we need to include a recommendation vote on the articles for the warrant to be posted for the purposes of deliberative session. And we can only change a recommendation vote after deliberative session on any article that's amended.
So we would just vote on the 3.
So I'm just spitballing here. The idea occurred to me because of Peter's reaction. Well, didn't we already vote on those? You kind of already did, and nothing changed. And so I believe, and Amy has the minutes in front of her, all of the votes were unanimous to recommend except the operating budget, which was 4-1. And so any of the members here interested or need to change any of those votes?
Mona?
And then at that point, it would just be the 3 petitioned articles, and those would be out of 4.
That's what I was going to recommend. was,
Okay.
You know, unless somebody had a change of heart.
Yep, which, yeah, so that's, so I guess we'll just look to members on that.
So have the collective bargaining agreements been approved for both?
No, so these are cost items. So for the police department, the police union is a new 3-year collective bargaining agreement. What we've done in the past for collective bargaining agreements that are, the contract hasn't expired and we've done a compensation study, is we've offered those increases to the union members under contract, either as a sidebar or an extension offer. So what this article does is it authorizes the cost items to be able to extend those to the Highway and Transfer Union. We've had some conversations, and I don't know that a decision has been definitively made on what they're interested in most, but this article at a minimum would authorize those cost item dollars and give the select board the ability to finalize a sidebar or a contract extension for the purpose.
Couple of things for me. The ballot, the operating budget, the article is projected to add 0 to the 2026 tax rate.
Right.
I thought the last time we discussed this, it was 5% or the increase or
4.69. Yeah, so we talked about this a little bit, but I think it's valuable to talk about again. And when we talked about, I made a graphic that we discussed with the select board on Monday to kind of try to demonstrate how that happens, how that exists. And the select board wanted to give the budget committee an opportunity to weigh in and see if there was a better way to do it. So we can do that now. Let me just pull up the presentation. I'll put it up on the screen here. But the big thing for that is the fact that in 2025, for the first time in recent history, Barrington funded all of the separate financial warrant articles from the tax rate. So typically we had used unassigned fund balance or a portion of unassigned fund balance. And so what happened in 2025 is for the tax rate, a decent portion of the tax rate funded separate financial warrant articles, which are discretionary year over year. And so the tax rate, the $3.39 tax rate, pays for all of the operating budget, and I'll pull up the graphic, but I think it was like 36% of the separate financial warrant articles proposed in 2026. So it's kind of a weird dynamic. Which is why I made this graphic.
And it seems confusing because on the one hand, the ballot question, you're saying there's no increase, then right next to it, you say that sort of represents the 4.69 increase.
Yeah, so the part of the purpose of going through this is to have an opportunity to weigh in and see what we can add to the explanation and the recommendation narrative, so we do that. I think what I said here, the 2026, currently at $3.39, the town's tax rate covers 100% of the proposed 2026 budget, which is projected to require a tax rate of $3.21 to increase non-property tax revenues. So let me show page 7.
In the blue,
Thank you.
page 7.
The bottom of the white and blue.
So this is the graphic. This is the graphic that I included in the budget public hearing presentation. And so on the left, here, let me focus on content here. So on the left, you see 2025, and the green is the budget, and the gold is the separate financial warrant articles. So you can see that $3 of the $3.39 tax rate funded the budget, essentially. And that also nets out the revenues, credits, fund balance, and overlay. And then the separate financial warrant articles was 39 cents. So our tax rate is $3.39. In 2026, of what's proposed, the operating budget will require a tax rate of $3.21, again, netting out revenue, credits, fund balance, and overlay. And the separate financial warrant articles will require 49 cents. So the operating budget is the only thing that we will definitely have. The operating budget will exist no matter what. All of the separate financial warrant articles are special warrant articles, which are discretionary. And so 100% of the 2026 budget and 37% of the warrant articles are covered by the current tax rate. And so the additional 31 cents required to fund the remaining 62% of the warrant articles, that's the aggregate of the tax rate increase. And so I'll show you the table also. Let me pull the table
Would
up.
it be clearer to add that the 339 covers
warrant
100% of proposed 26 budget plus warrant articles?
Plus the 37% of warrant articles?
Yep.
And
Because I agree with Bill, I don't think it's clear.
And the issue I have is, you know, we still have a 4.69 increase in the operating budget, correct?
yes, the increase in the dollars.
Right.
Yep, not corrected for non-property tax revenue and other things like that.
That's,
If I didn't know better, I'd say, huh?
Yeah, even the white box had zero.
Pardon me, Scott?
Yeah, it's tough.
So let me pull up.
I thought this always went to a zero basis, so it was always something.
Well, so that's why we show the $3.21. So I'll show you the table that this group helped me create in 2 or 3 years ago. Okay. So now let me. Okay, let me share this now. Window. Okay, so this is how, let me make it bigger. This is how we do our tax rate estimate, right? It's not voodoo, it's not pseudoscience, they're all numbers. We can project the numbers, we know most of them, right? So this looks at 2025, which the tax rate's been set, so these are all actuals. In 2026, which we finalized the budget, we finalized the warrant articles. So, you know, some of these numbers are set, others are projections. But what we look at is say, we know the operating budget appropriation proposed, the warrant articles proposed. We assume they all pass. So we assume for the purposes of calculating the projected tax rate increase that they all pass. War service credits, so this is a projection based on current enrollments. So in the note over here, you see that House Bill 99, because that removed the $750 from 56 recipients, that's a reduction of $42,000. But then we have a petitioned article to increase it to $5,000, which is an increase of $56,000. So there's a net increase included here of $14,000 as a result of those. Again, assuming everything passes to give the maximum kind of liability. Overlay projected at the same, total revenue projected a small increase, fund balance to reduce taxes. This is a result of our current fund balance position and the surplus from the 12.5% target. So then the net of all of that is our tax effort, which shows how much more would need to be raised by taxes than what was raised in the prior year to fund everything that's proposed. And then the total assessed value, we have targeted $20 million increase in value year over year. In the last couple of years, it's been more, but that's a 9-year average, and 20 million is still a good number there. So anyways, the net of all of that, again, not looking at individual articles or anything else, tells us that if everything passes and those projections like revenue and total assessed value are appropriate, then our tax rate in 2026 would be $3.70 or 31 cents higher than current. So then now we have to take that information and apply it. Can I go full screen here? No, I'll go full screen. Full screen. Let me configure. So now we have to apply that to the warrant articles, right? And so I already told you that at $3.39, that pays for all of the operating budget and what was it, 37% of the warrant articles.
And that's
So,
all of the increased operating budget for this year.
right.
Okay.
Right. So the way that, for the purposes of openness and transparency, the way that we kind of worked out to present it that shows kind of all the information that somebody would want to know to make an informed decision, the first thing we show is the total appropriation amount, and you see that column. So that's how many real dollars are we looking at, and what's the total of those real dollars, or the financial impact of those decisions, like with the service-connected total disability credit, right? So we're not raising those dollars, but that's a financial impact. And then, and I think this is an important one, what's the portion of the estimated 2026 tax rate that is responsible for these articles? So again, if in 2026 everything passes and our tax rate is $3.70, what is the total? And I think that's, somebody said, don't we start from zero? What's the, like from zero, what is the cost of this? And that's what this shows. The cost of the operating budget is $3.26, which I need to update the voter guides at 21. So of $3.70, $3.26 would be the budget, 13 cents would be this article, on down the line. So then that's the portion of the total tax rate, projected tax rate. But what we present on the warrant articles is the impact, the tax rate impact. So what is the impact to the tax rate by passing this article? And so impact requires you to look at what was your rate last year and what will the rate be if you approve this. And so that's where, if you look at the estimated tax rate increase, again, the operating budget at 339, the increased operating budget is covered 100% by a 339 tax rate. So that's why there's no impact in that case. And then for the financial warrant articles, even though the heavy equipment capital reserve would be 13 cents of the $3.70 warrant article, it's only an impact increase of 9 cents, because 37% of that article is already built into the current tax rate that we have. So the impact, the increase on the tax rate, is 9 cents. And so the estimated tax bill increase is $38. And then of your total bill that you pay in 2026, this warrant article would be $55 of that bill.
Way down. I guess I go back to here where, we look at the operating budget and it says 4.69% over last year. That's a pretty hefty increase. And then you look over to the left and it says, well, there's no increase.
There's no increase in
impact.
taxes.
No impact to the tax.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Because
different
it's-
than this was done last year, right? And the year before.
Well, so the difference this year is we've never had this experience where over 700, what was the number? Over $700,000 outside of the budget, $735,000 of warrant articles was funded by the tax rate. We've never had that before. In Barrington, we always funded warrant articles by unassigned fund balance, or in recent years, 50% funding from unassigned fund balance. And so this is the first year where our current tax rate pays for our proposed increased operating budget and then some. And so the alternative, and Amy and I workshopped this, you could assign just a illustrative number to each article based on the dollar increase, right? So you could do the math and say at $1.9 billion valuation, $100,000 is worth, 19 cents on the tax rate. And then do the math. The problem is what that would show you, which I can do the math. But what that would do is that would artificially project, that would artificially show a tax rate that is tens of cents higher than what we'd actually expect it to be. And that seems like that seems very unproductive.
The ballot question is what's required by law, right?
Correct.
So we can't change that. So really the explanation should address this, right, somehow?
Well, so the way that as a starting point, and like I said, I welcome input, but by saying currently at $3.39, the town's tax rate covers 100% of the proposed 2026 budget, which is projected to require a tax rate of $3.26. There's a typo there, due to increased non-property tax revenues.
But the 339 covers the warrant articles. I don't think it's clear. I mean,
That's what I was gonna.
we work with this stuff and I don't think we're convinced that it's clear.
Exactly. How's it, if we're kind of going back and forth on this,
I wordsmithed it a little bit because
Yeah.
the town's current tax rate at 339 covers 100% of the proposed 2026 budget and 37% of the proposed warrant articles. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I'm still not sure people would understand that. I mean, should we just say that this would, how much of an increase is there for the operating budget versus the default budget?
170,000 about.
So one's $170,000 above the other. No, what would be the tax rate if they do the default budget, just on the operating?
You mean like what portion of the 2020, like what would the difference be between 326 to fund the budget and it would be 315 to fund
Whatever,
the default budget? Yeah, I'll tell you that. Just 1 second.
Because I'm wondering if that's really what they're being asked to vote on.
Well, that's the decision because it's one or the other. But again, the statutory requirement, so voters in Barrington said that we have to include a tax rate impact statement in the warrant article. And so telling them the difference between the default and the proposed budget doesn't accomplish the statutory requirement of the impact, because the impact is the impact from last year. It's you have a tax rate, you have a new tax rate. You know what I mean?
I do.
So, but let me do 170,000.
To me, that's adding more confusion into it.
Okay, so, but
Simple.
a $0 impact will make everybody, it'll set up.
So it's about 10 cents. It's about 9-cent difference. So it would be, instead of 326, it would be 315. It would be 315. The default budget would be funded with 315. So like on this table, I could add an entry, add a row for default budget that says 10 million, blah, 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 portion of the tax rate, 315. Estimated increase would still be 0. And then portion of the tax bill would be, 315 times 425.
Yeah, I just think we need more of an explanation than, I don't think people would know to go there, think to go there, or understand what it all means.
Yeah. So, yeah, and what I struggle with, and please help me, is I believe that this math is all correct. Like, these are the appropriate numbers.
But I think you got to admit it's poorly explained. And I think that's our position.
But,
It's
but
not
how do you
explained
explain
well.
it? How do you explain it? Like, you have to be able to, unfortunately, you have to be able to explain and understand each of these component parts and how they interplay in order to understand. Like, I don't know how to simplify it, so please help.
But again,
What is actually required to be in the explanation?
We can put whatever we want in there, as long as it's objective.
What if
Right,
you,
but you said there had to be something
In
about
the
the
warrant
tax rate.
article. In the warrant article, in the white box.
Okay,
That we are required to provide a tax rate impact statement.
okay.
so in the blue box, could you have current tax rate for operating budget, future tax rate of new operating budget, and future tax rate of default budget?
Yep.
And would that be clear for everybody?
Have a graphic,
We could.
because sometimes graphics
But-
catch people's eye.
The select board didn't really like my graphic from the presentation with the
It's so
tower,
hard.
you know? And I don't, I don't.
Not a graphic, just tiny table with the numbers next to each other so they can see them instead of having to filter through them.
What I think is getting me, and I think will get people, is they're looking at this proposed budget represents a 4.69 increase. And that is what I think.
that's not
people are gonna-
zero.
It's not zero.
Yeah.
And that's what people are gonna go, and they're gonna say 4.69. And that I
Or
think.
be deceived by the zero.
Yeah, and well, what is this over here? It means zero, and how do we explain that? I think is the difficult part.
So, yeah, so to Scott's point, we can include in the explanation that saying the portion of 2025 tax rate, operating portion of 2025 tax rate was $3. Proposed 2026 is $3.26, and default is $3.15.
And warrant articles. I think there should be some comment about the warrant article.
You'd like to see somewhere the total picture.
And then mention warrant articles here.
Yep.
So what if we had, and just spitballing here, but what if, so we have page 6. What if here we included a whole table of, like, what if we included not necessarily this exact table,
Yeah, but something like it.
but something like it that shows the total? And just says brass tacks, if you approve everything, your tax rate will go up 31 cents and your tax bill will go up $119. And here's the component parts.
I think that's a lot more direct and more understandable than
Mhm.
what we got now.
The problem remains.
It's very defensive.
Well, I struggle with
This is
it.
difficult. I mean, this is hard. This is hard.
So the challenge remains what to do on this line. Because, so like this column, I think is, everybody can agree on. Providing this information is valuable. If the tax rate's gonna be 370, how much from each article is, but when we're talking about impact, this article won't have a 13-cent impact on the tax rate because 37% of this article is already built into the tax rate, which is why this column exists, which takes, obviously it covers the entire operating budget, and then it takes and reduces this number essentially by 37%. And that's the only way that the math works, so that this impact sums to 31 cents.
But will people understand that? That I think is where we're,
So
how do we
yeah.
get that out to everybody and, articulate that in such a way that they're gonna get it?
Yep. So I have some notes down
if
here,
we're
which I
having-
think your point will be nobody will read it, and so it won't make sense. But in the notes, specific to the point about, I went to the wrong one, down here. So in 2025, 735,000 of separate warrant article funding was approved by voters to be paid from property taxes. This additional amount raised by taxes was proportionally applied to the operating budget and warrant articles. The 2026 approach factors in 161,000 unassigned fund balance, blah, 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 which was also proportionally applied. So like that's the attempt at drawing a line between the information. But I don't think the average person is going to look at this table and read that, even if it's in the voter guide.
And
So do people need to know that there's an increase in the operating budget this year versus last year? Because we don't say in the specific, highway equipment capital reserve that this is a percentage increase from last year. Maybe that's the confusion where we say it's a zero tax rate impact, but it's an increase. But we don't say that on any of the other ones, like the library technology capital reserve. We're not saying it went from 3,000 to now we're requesting 15,000.
So you're saying in the explanation, would it be easier to not include in the explanation that it's a 4.69%
I think it's important
increase?
for people to know that we're increasing the operating budget.
But
But
we got
like
you
in this
covered.
format, that's where the confusion, I think personally, is coming from, because yes, I love this table, but like, I would also say to simplify the table, take out column 3 and only leave the 31-cent increase.
Right.
But that's also like, we want to give everybody the information, but that column, those two columns right next to each other are confusing. But to simplify, we almost have to like take away some of the information, but we want to provide all the information. So it's like hard.
And I'm so bad at that. I'm so bad at choosing what information to withhold to make something more clear. Because like my day-to-day is just make everything available. Like make as much information available. But I think you're right. I think we have to decide what information do we need to or not withhold, but just not like put front and center.
Like, is it
to make
important
it
to
more
have it in
clear.
this blue bubble? This information is provided a lot of places on the website, talked about, shown other places. If you wanted to put a graph of other things that show that increase somewhere, or even this graph,
So
I think that's helpful, but it is side by side, and so you're reading this, and then you're reading that right next to it. If this is the only thing you're ever reading, like, that's where it gets.
And you have the advantage of having developed this, so to you
Yeah.
it's crystal clear.
I know.
To somebody reading it, I don't think.
And that's
it will
why I
be.
need help.
well, that's
Yeah.
why I looked at this.
So let's work with that just as an idea, as a thought exercise. If we both included in the prior page just a summary, some version of this table, which gives brass tacks. In total, this is 31-cent increase. Here's all the warrant articles that you'll see, and this is kind of how they all add up. And then on the operating budget article, strike the percentage increase. Still provide a link to the budget proposal and all that information, but then also include in this blue box the operating budget portion of the 2025 tax rate was $3. The proposed 2026 budget portion of the tax rate is $3.26, and the default budget is $3.15. In conjunction with the text that's already in here, that currently at $3.39, the tax rate covers 100% of the 2026 budget, which is projected.
But I'd put including warrant articles.
And then I was going to continue.
37.
And 37% of the warrant articles, and Mona provided that language.
It is very clear here also in the ballot question. It said, should this article be defeated, the default budget shall be 10 million, blah, 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 which is the same as last year with certain adjustments. So it is less. So people know that this year budget is more, but without putting that percentage right next to the $0. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm seeing head nods.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me draft that up. And it's easy to change the blue explanation through the process. So if we refine it, if we have epiphanies and other ideas, we can do that. So
Yeah.
I think that was a really productive conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amy.
And-
Microphone was
Not too
off.
much,
Your microphone was
but-
off the whole
Good,
time.
good.
And because we reduced some of the warrant articles, it might be useful to say under the warrant article, what it was last year, what it is this year, and the tax rate impact last year and this year, then carry that over the operating budget as well.
So I know where you're coming from.
Mhm.
The problem I have with that is they're all special articles. Just because past practice in Barrington has been to propose a lot of similar warrant articles, they're all one-offs. They rise and fall one year, and then next year is a different year. And so like there are a number of articles that didn't exist last year. And so you're comparing to zero, and then that makes it look like, okay, so the highway heavy equipment article last year was 200,000, this year is 300,000. So that's an increase of 50%. But then the
Bridge and culvert is way down.
bridge and culvert or the public safety space needs was zero last year because it didn't exist. Now it's 150,000. And so weird to say, but I feel like that additional information is confusing. I don't know how to provide that additional information, like comparative information, comparative to last year, without it being confusing. Which is why I opted, instead of individually comparing articles, I opted to take the aggregate of all of last year's articles and just proportionally reduce
No, I get that.
impact. I wish the state just told us how to do it. And then it was like, okay, we're just doing what the state does. So Amy in Lee 2 or 3 years ago petitioned an article to require them to improve a tax rate impact. So they provide tax rate impact statements now. I want to say they do it in a more complicated way than we do it.
I think they were wrong at one point
Yeah.
when they did their bond, and I brought it to you, and I was like, this is wrong, and we calculated it.
So
It
it's
was,
done
yeah.
different everywhere.
Yeah, which is weird.
Which
Mhm.
actually, I don't think they're more complicated. I think you just have it more organized in this fashion to so I think what they only do is they estimate on
Yes.
their tax rate. But we're saying, that fourth column is what brings it to the most accurate
Right.
estimate. I think other towns just use the portion and not, the third column.
I think what people want to know is how much is it this year, how much is it next year, and what's the default? That's the main piece of information people want, right?
Yep.
Numbers.
And I think including the $3, the $3.15, and the $3.26 in the blue will be helpful for that. And it's not in here yet. I received some very positive information from a recent school board meeting that the school board voted to include a tax rate impact on their articles this year, which is great. I think a win for transparency in Barrington. But what I want to do now, I wanted to do this last year. So this ballot reference sheet was created last year. Just kind of like a one-sheet summary. Somebody can go in, circle how they're going to vote. So now what I want to do, since there's going to be tax rate impact information for all of the articles, I want to have a column that allow people to circle the tax rate impact for the things they vote yes to, and then total it at the end. And then a calculator line on it that allows them to put in their assessed value for their home and see what that impact on their tax bill would be for saying yes on those things.
Yeah.
Because I think you're right. I think that's what people care about. And there's a contingent of residents who believe that everybody is just an uninformed voter and they vote yes on things because they don't know how much it's going to cost. And I really push back on that perspective because it's my job to make sure that residents are able to be informed voters. And so I know the information's available, but I love being able to point at things like this summary table or the voter guide or the warrant article language and say, we spoon feed residents about what the impact, positive and negative. This is what this money will be used for. This is what services you will get for these dollars. And the cost, the tax rate impact. So I think it would be a tremendous service to the residents and the ability to take away the low-hanging fruit of people have no way to know how much it's gonna cost them if they say yes on things. So I wanna have that summary right here too. And so maybe what I would do for the operating budget is have two entries. One for yes, which is for the operating budget, and one for no, which would be the default budget and what that cost would be. Reasonable? Cool. All right, I think we have a plan here. What I'd like to do now, and I know it's already 4:30, but I'd like to vote on did everybody affirm that they didn't want to change their vote on any of the articles from the operating budget to the disabled exemption? Did they vote on the disabled exemption in 25th? I'm not sure the select board had that finalized then.
I don't have anything.
What articles did they vote on? Because did they vote on the collective bargaining articles?
Yes.
Okay.
It was just a placeholder. But that's what I have here.
But it was recommended. Yep.
Well,
So it's just the disabled exemption. So we need to vote on the disabled exemption and the 3 petitioned, unless somebody wants to change a vote on any of the others.
Any interest in that?
Just on the three.
Changing where we were?
From November 25th?
Say again?
You want to change anything from our vote on the 25th? So I think we're all set.
Okay, so we'll do disabled exemption. It'd be a motion to recommend and then a vote.
All right, and we're on what page?
Well,
I'm sorry. 26?
Thank you.
We also have to do the disabled exemption, right?
Yeah, that's 26.
Okay.
I think what we're doing now.
Yeah.
Any questions?
No.
Okay.
I would be perfectly okay with that because there are income constraints for everybody who's disabled.
So motion to recommend, it sounded like then?
Yes, I would make the motion that we accept
To say specifically?
to make that to increase the income limit from 30 to 36,000 for the disabled exemption.
But we don't know what the impact will be.
Correct.
Right, so first, we don't need to vote on the collective bargaining agreement.
Already did.
Already
Already
did,
did.
We already did, okay.
and we were unanimous, I believe.
Yes. Yep. And so for the elderly exemption, the single income limit is 36,000. It was raised from 30 a couple years ago. And the select board, in looking at the data this year, saw that maybe it should have been raised to 36,000 back then, just so they continue to match, because the 50,000 for married is still the same for both.
Can you ballpark what the impact of that is?
Well, so the problem is we have no data. So we don't know how many people in Barrington are disabled and earn between 30 and 36,000. That's the information we need to know and are likely to apply.
I see.
So I can tell you anecdotally that I'm not aware of any disabled applicants for the disabled exemption in the last year that came in, applied, and it was determined that they made too much money between 30 and 36,000.
They have to apply every year?
Yes. Well, yes, yeah. So there's, we verify the income and asset limits.
But the veterans can also get this in addition to the service-connected payments,
No.
one or the other, okay.
And you can't get the disabled exemption and the,
So it says
elderly
these
exemption
exemptions and credits are provided to veterans, including disabled, the elderly, the disabled, and more.
where are you reading this?
On page 26 in the blue.
Yeah, talking collectively, I provide a link to the exemption and credit analysis and explain that exemptions and credits collectively are provided to veterans, the elderly, the disabled, and more. So maybe I need to clarify to make sure folks realize that that's all of the exemptions and credits and not just this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
this exemption applies to someone who is disabled, correct?
Like SSDI, think SSDI.
If you have a veteran who is disabled,
Mhm.
this doesn't apply to them?
No, it would.
It would, but you can't also claim a veteran's credit. Is that?
So the way that the exemptions and credits are structured in general is that you can't stack any of them. It's the more generous of the exemption or credit you're eligible for is what you receive. The House Bill 99 clarified and made sure that you're not stacking those two veteran credits. But the service-connected total disability credit recipients do not receive the disabled exemption.
How about if in your explanation, if you were to, and again, I'm about halfway down the blue box, these exemptions and credits are provided to all disabled, and then parenthetically, veterans, elderly, disabled.
Yeah, I'll retool that whole area because like what I'm trying to say, like I don't think the average resident really understands exemptions and credits in general. And so I start by saying each year the select board looks at all of our exemptions and credits, and here's the 2025 analysis that shows we continue to provide levels that are more generous than the state average. These being these collective exemptions and credits are provided to various categories like veterans and the elderly and disabled and more. The single elderly income limit was increased in 2020, but the disabled income limit remained at 30. So I was trying to like zoom farther out, but I realize it's making it confusing. So I think I need to
I like the
retool
way
that.
you just said it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was good.
And in a way,
I'll
That's
capture
what
that.
it's-
I could see expanding this more and not, I mean, that would be real property tax relief for some people. I mean, they also can't have, they can't own a home in essence. They can't own.
No, your primary residence does not count towards your assets. Mhm.
So this is a more important credit for people in the town as a whole.
This exemption is important.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not very many people qualify, right? Like even if you collect Social Security,
I was gonna say,
if you have anything else, you're not meeting the income limit. You know, like well, you can look at the participation. Let me, I'll open up the exemption and credit analysis, which includes the utilization for 2025.
And what is net income? How's that determined? What is it net of?
Well, I think,
Is it your AGI in essence?
where does it say net income? Because I think
In
it's
the ballot question itself.
a net income of not more than 36,000. Let me- All monies received from any source such as earnings, Social Security, pension, IRA distributions. The definition explicitly excludes the following three items: life insurance payments received on the death of an insured, expenses and costs incurred in the course of conducting a business enterprise, and proceeds from the sale of assets such as a car, stock, second property in the year they are received. So regular income.
But if you have a big taxable portfolio, you can sell the stock and that doesn't count.
Except that you have asset limits also.
Yeah.
And so that's why.
I think the way around that is through trusts and things. You kind of bury what you have.
So.
We had a guy on Toland Road many years ago, drove Suzanne McNeil crazy because he was very wealthy and he qualified for the elderly exemption. So there's always a way around.
So I guess I support this. If somebody, I think this is the type of person that needs property tax relief.
So we have 30 property owners in Barrington that participate in the disabled exemption. So like I said, I mean, it's a narrow portion of our population. And that generates 1.48 million in untaxed value.
So they basically do not pay any income tax, any property taxes. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, there are some that don't, but that means their assessed value of their mobile home in a park would have to be less than 50,000.
Okay.
Okay, so there was a motion to recommend the articles. Scott sounded like seconded it.
Yep.
And a vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay, petition to Article number 1, which is reduce land use change tax from 75 to 50. Anybody interested in making a recommendation to approve the article?
I would move that we approve the article for reducing the land use change tax to 50%.
Okay, is there a second to recommend reduction?
What is the total amount that they get each year?
Varies based on how much land is disqualifies for land use change tax. The 3-year average total is about 200,000, which is why 25% is equal to about $50,000. But what do the stock advisors say? Past performance isn't indicative of future.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm worried about is then it's great as a one-time effect, but next year there have to be an article to increase it back to make us even. Otherwise, we're just shortchanging us in all future years.
Well, the money would just go, well, the land use change tax money, no matter what, just goes into general fund revenue.
But we would be getting lower rates, lower percentages.
Well, no, this would be binding year over year. So if it's reduced from 75 to 50, then in all future years, unless or until it's changed again, 50% would go to the conservation fund and 50% would go to the general fund revenue, period. The one-time thing is the next article, which is the appropriation into a capital reserve. So one of the things that the primary petitioner, Ron Allard, one of the things that he talked about doing in future years is doing a 1-year look back and petitioning an article, if the select board won't sponsor it, equal to 25% of the total land use change tax collections from the prior year. So for instance, say this year both pass and we deposit 50,000 into this new capital reserve. And in 2026, let's assume we collect $100,000 in total land use change tax dollars. That means that 50 will go to the conservation fund and 50 will go to general fund revenue. But 25% of that, which is the kind of like reduction here, the theoretical portion that this group of people wants to see go to invasive species, then in 2027, he would petition an article asking to deposit 25,000 into the capital reserve, being representative of 25% of the prior year. Which that's what we used to do for some of you that have been around for a while. That's what we used to do with the cemetery capital reserve. We took our cemetery lot revenue in 1 year, and in the next year, we asked an article to deposit that same amount of money into the capital reserve. Now, they were 2 separate years. The money never even commingled, but it was this idea of taking that amount of money and putting it in. Now, they changed the law and allowed you to deposit it into a trust fund automatically, which is what we do now.
But if this Article 27, changing from 75% to 50%, that changes how much money, it doesn't change how much money the town gets. It only changes the allocation. So more will go to the general fund as opposed to the conservation fund.
Yes.
And if they wanted to change, can the select board use the money in support of cons?
No. General fund revenue is untouchable. It's just revenue to offset taxes.
So let me just ask you, let's say that this goes forward and the next one doesn't.
Yes, that's a possible reality.
Right.
And there would just be extra money in the general fund revenue. Tax rate would go down a little bit.
And what is the impact to the conservation fund realistically, if you were to explain it to somebody going forward?
They'll have less money.
What wouldn't we do?
I think it'd be a good question to ask of the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission has historically prioritized land conservation above all else. And so they have held on to money and spent money primarily for the purposes of new land conservation, either on their own or participating with other organizations like Southeast Land Trust. Historically, the Select Board has advocated, and sometimes strongly, that the Conservation Commission spend more of their money on taking care of the conservation properties that we have, like building parking lots and developing access and things like that. So that's been a kind of a constant rub between the Select Board and the Conservation Commission. Most recently in the spotlight was the Richardson Pond Dam project, where at one point the Select Board said they're putting a moratorium on all new conservation projects until the Conservation Commission pay to start taking care of the Richardson Pond Dam. And so there's new select boards now, and we obviously ended up with the agreed upon 65-35 split, where 35% will come from the dam capital reserve and 65% will come from the conservation fund. So I think the current Conservation Commission priorities, what would we not do? We would have less money available to execute conservation projects that come up in the future.
So really, we would have less money to buy land, but the town could spend money, because it's been discussed on the planning board as well. We have a lot of properties that we're not really tracking, seeing what's happening as we do more conservation subdivisions, who owns it, how does it get managed? Is there any management? And it's been raised, the question about the Conservation Commission, are they fulfilling their obligation there, similar to what you're saying?
Yep.
Would the Select Board take that money and,
They can't touch it.
so where does that money, it just goes in general fund?
Yep.
So it would offset tax rate?
Yep. In that year that it's collected, period. Same thing if we have a bunch of building permits one year that we don't anticipate,
Problem I have with this is I'd love to talk to people before needing to vote.
Yep.
Don't
have that luxury.
Yeah.
Second to Peter's motion to recommend approval. And if there is no second, then there can be a recommended motion not to recommend,
I would make that motion.
to not recommend.
Correct.
Seconded by?
Can I ask why?
I just think it's more important for the money to go to the conservation efforts. That's, as I see this, that's taking money from the conservation efforts. And granted, it's going to the general fund, but my druthers at this point is just to leave it alone, leave it the way it is. It's at 75 now, leave it.
So you would like to see the commission, in essence, buy more land?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and also, to your point,
Or do more maintenance.
Do more,
do
yeah.
more maintenance and give us some explanation of what you're doing here.
And use it on the
Yeah,
Swains as well?
yep.
It was seconded, I think, by Mona.
Yep.
Vote to not recommend approval of this petitioned article.
But he's thinking.
I'm thinking it's a problem. And if we vote no on this, you're essentially voting no on the other, because it can't go forward.
Well, if this doesn't pass, the results of the next article don't matter, correct?
I am gonna say, I don't know.
You want to vote last?
Yeah, I'll vote last.
Okay, Peter.
Give me,
To explain where I'm at, I'm going to vote yes for the reduction in conservation money and no on the next article.
So to Bill's motion,
I'm a yes.
I tracked it. So on Bill's motion, you're voting no, because his motion was to not recommend this article.
Right.
So you're voting no.
I'm no to the no, double
Yep.
negative.
And you're gonna vote no on the next one.
Correct.
He doesn't want to recommend the next
So
one.
you just want to lower the tax.
Right.
Yep. And Bill,
If I get this right, I don't support this.
yes.
So if
Yes.
that's a yes vote then. in
Yes.
this case.
Yes, vote.
Down to you, Scott.
So we are voting to say no to this.
Mhm.
So if I say no, I mean yes, and if I say yes, I mean no, just to be clear.
Perfectly clear, right?
Potato, potato.
I'm gonna vote no. There's just, again, I've done with the library in the past, there's just not enough information here. I'm gonna vote no.
So that means that you support the petitioned article.
No, I do not.
Oh, okay. So,
He's actually a yes.
yep.
You're a yes.
Yes, I'm a yes.
So that mean, well, he's a yes for the motion.
Right,
Correct.
You're voting with Mona and Bill
yes.
to leave it the same.
We're all voting the same way.
No, Peter's
Not
voting.
me.
You want to keep the tax.
No, I want to reduce the tax to 50.
Is that what you want to do?
The motion left us with a double negative. I think that's the
Yeah,
problem.
Do you want it to stay at 75 or go to 50?
Uh,
And again, using those numbers, I'm the 50.
I
Mona and
wanted
Bill
to
are
stay at
75.
75.
We want it to stay at 75. So the motion, what will be recorded on the ballot is that the Advisory Budget Committee does not recommend approval of this article by a vote of 3-1.
Correct.
Yep, okay, next article.
And in support of my colleagues who wanted this to stay at 75, I would recommend that we change the number in the Advisory Budget Committee
Yes.
from 842, take out what we've currently committed.
And I'll say what's encumbered. We'll come back to the recommendation
Yep.
narratives once we finish,
good.
but yeah, I agree.
See, I can be supportive.
Invasive species capital reserve. So again, this is contingent on the first article passing. But
They couldn't have done this not contingent?
They
just
could have.
didn't want the cost.
Ron Allard didn't want to end up with a possibility that there would be a tax rate increase.
So they can't say the petition warrant article to spend $50,000 from conservation.
No. Nope, it's not legal. You can't direct the Conservation Commission how to spend the conservation fund, just like you can't direct the select board how to spend money. Like the operating budget, if somebody came in and said, you know what, I want to cut $175,000 out of the budget because I don't want the town to buy any gas or diesel next year. They could reduce the bottom line of the budget, $175,000, if that's approved by deliberative session and passes at voting. But the select board can spend the money however they want. That's their authority to do. So, similarly, Conservation Commission, the select board can't even tell the Conservation Commission how to spend the money. Select board can't touch that conservation fund money. It's only the Conservation Commission. Okay, capital reserve article. So we'd
Yeah.
start,
I think, I would say that the reason, well, let's go on. So we're going to go for the invasive species capital reserve.
Yep.
I'm going to vote no. And I think my reason would be, I think they need to talk and come to some agreement first with the Conservation Commission,
Mhm.
definitive agreement. And if not, talk about how it will be used.
yep, more details on utilization.
Yeah.
So that's a not to recommend. Mona?
Not to recommend.
Not to recommend.
Not to recommend.
Okay, so unanimously not recommended.
Correct.
Just so I'm clear, this doesn't inhibit them from doing any invasive species
Right.
work. It's just setting us, okay.
Yep,
They
it's
still
a good
can do it,
question.
it's just, okay.
Yep, good question.
And that would be my hope for what would happen.
So-
It's taking a chance with future revenue for the Conservation Commission.
4,000 to 5,000 for the service-connected total disability credit. Obviously, we talked about this a lot earlier, but this would be a recommendation on approval of this petition warrant article to increase the credit. The projected tax rate impact is 3 cents or $12. reflecting that $56,000 swing.
And did the select board vote on this?
Yes, they do not recommend it by a vote of 4-1. And the majority felt Barrington residents have approved appropriate levels and that the select board start a multi-year process and that the county and state averages are much lower than what we already provide.
But this is only for people who've actually been in active combat.
And were totally and permanently disabled as a result of their
Both.
service.
Both.
Total and permanent.
I'm gonna vote yes,
Support it.
support it.
Mona?
Yes.
Bill?
No.
No.
Okay, so with 2 members, Amy, you get the tie vote. No, I'm just kidding. So I'll have to figure out what the wording will be for this, but the ABC, the ABC does not make a recommendation.
Does not support the warrant article. Right?
Well, it's 2-2.
Yeah.
Because-
Ties go which way?
Yeah. Ties go with the no action. So if it's a recommendation, it's does not recommend by a vote of 2-2, because it would have to be an affirmative, it would have to be a majority to recommend it.
Right.
And what is the reason for not recommending it?
For exactly what the select board pointed out, I think we're way over the averages now for state and county. And, I don't see any need to be in the top percentile.
How many people actually get this?
56. One of the select board's concerns was that when it was 2,000 and we started incrementally increasing it to 4,000, there was 32 service-connected total disability credit recipients that lived in Barrington. And I think there's a perspective that this targeting the maximum has attracted service-connected total disability credit recipients to settle in Barrington, bringing our participation from 32 to 56 in the span of full 5 years.
Oh. Interesting.
I mean, that's anecdotal. That's just
It's, but
a perspective of I'll say a select board member. Okay. So now we need to do narratives, and the voter guide is very important to me for reasons that you all know and understand. One of the things that we're doing a little different this year is we're basically treating these recommendation narratives as excerpts from the minutes, essentially, of this meeting. And so what will be included in the voter guide is at the January 7th Advisory Budget Committee meeting, the Advisory Budget Committee said XYZ. So that there's no ability to mince words, that this is the perspective of the Advisory Budget Committee. And here's the minutes that explain that. So what I want to do is I want to read, and so I have pulled both from the prior exercises in this development process to give us a starting point. And I want to read this and have you all refine it and affirm that, and we'll move on. Okay, and they'll be recorded in the minutes. So starting with the operating budget article, and this was relatively fast for the select board. Hopefully it'll be a fast process here. So Budget Committee recommends the article 4-1. The majority feel that the town administrator, finance administrator, department heads perform a fiscally sound and thorough budget development process, which identifies departmental needs to perform their desired level of service. The budget proposal includes essential funding to maintain Barrington's core services, public works, police, fire, EMS. In 2025, the Advisory Budget Committee encouraged the Select Board to pursue a total compensation study to ensure appropriate and data-driven compensation decisions are made. The 2025 total compensation study was completed in November 2025. Following review by the Advisory Budget Committee, the Select Board voted to approve the report and include the recommendations of the 2026 budget proposal. Each budget request is justified by a detailed itemization of expenditures and conservative staffing levels to provide those services. The annual financial audits demonstrate sound management of expenditures. The minority would have felt more comfortable with an operating budget proposal increase closer to the 12-month consumer price index of 3%. The 1.69% difference between the proposed increase in inflation represents approximately $170,000.
I think what I would like to say though is that because really the cost of things that you buy was lower than the cost of inflation. It's basically as a result of the study, right? It's increase in benefit cost and salary costs.
Not all as a result of the study, but yes, the
Yeah, but
80% of the increase to the operating budget was wage and benefit factor.
Because I think it's important for people to understand that actually the general operating expenses are below inflation.
So we'll add that to the majority field somewhere.
Do you agree, everyone? You don't care?
I'd have to look to confirm that.
Yeah, if we did, I
Well, we
wrote
did
down
the
it was like
math. We did back of the
1.2.
napkin math.
It was like 1.2% or something really small. Let me see, I wrote it somewhere here.
I'm comfortable with the language as is,
Me too.
and I'm
Okay, then don't worry about me.
Okay. Peter, as the minority perspective? Is that
I
appropriate?
think that's
Gotcha.
right on the money.
Cool. Okay. Going on, and these ones are pretty straightforward. Highway Heavy Equipment Capital Reserve recommended unanimously. They feel the saving capital reserve accounts the most fiscally responsible way to plan for large expenditures. The planned purchases from the capital reserve are essential for operations of the department. It should not be deferred. Each year, the members of the Advisory Budget Committee reviews updated plans for each capital reserve account and challenge town staff to find cost savings and alternative purchase and replacement options. The Advisory Budget Committee and department leadership feel the contribution should be $300,000 in 2026 and 2027, and then can be reevaluated for potential reduction based on the needs of the equipment replacement schedule. Okay.
Everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Paving and related road work unanimously recommended. They feel these additional funds are essential to continue making progress in the pavement management plan. The operating budget for paving was level funded for 2026. The Advisory Budget Committee recommends utilizing the remaining $68,000 of the state road revenue, SB 401, instead of increasing the 2026 operating budget. Together with their proposed budget, the remaining 2025 funds, this separate warrant article of $150,000 and the state funds, there will be $999,000 available for paving in 2026. Including this $150,000 as a separate warrant article allows residents to have greater power in deciding about appropriating additional paving dollars.
I think that's great. Scott, you okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
Public safety building article, which we might need to add some meat on the bone here. Unanimously recommended. They feel it is important to explore all options and future needs before bringing a bond article before voters. They support the consideration for impact fees, which assign a cost to the impact new dwelling units have on municipal services. I mean, you all did a tour. I don't know if you want to add anything there about specific operational needs or other things that occur to you.
I don't know how to put it, but I would say based on the tour, it's fairly obvious that we need a new building.
So maybe I'll say that on X date, the
Yeah.
18th, I think it was, 11/18, members of the ABC participated in a facility tour and felt strongly
Well, that,
that a
Expanded facility will be necessary to.
new/expanded facility.
Yeah.
Updated.
expanded
Updated
facility
will be
is
needed to,
in the very near future or the
well,
near
to
future.
support continued
Yeah.
growth in the town.
Facility will be necessary to support
Current.
the current and future level of service.
Correct.
Level of service. Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. And I think that highlights the work. I mean, you're getting your hands dirty, getting out there and you're looking at this stuff. Okay. Fire truck capital reserve unanimously recommended. They feel that saving capital reserves is the most fiscally responsible plan for future expenditures. Planned purchases from this capital reserve are essential for the operation of the department, should not be deferred. Each year, the Advisory Budget Committee reviews updated plans for capital reserve account and challenges town staff to find cost savings and alternative purchase and replacement options. In recent years, the Advisory Budget Committee has applauded the work of the fire chief and officers to find lower cost alternatives to full replacement, such as the cabin chassis remount of the town's tank truck and buying a new ambulance with a refurbished patient compartment. This approach demonstrates good planning and careful stewardship of public funds.
The only thing I would say, and it may not be appropriate to add, but I'm not sure if saving is the best way to go. And, that's going to be part of the work of the capital group. Is that still in play?
It's a warrant article.
Okay.
Can you make sure that the ABC on the 25th voted to recommend the CIP article from the minutes on the 25th?
Yeah.
Pretty sure you did, but. Yes, I mean, that's a carbon copy in all of the capital reserve articles. So if we want to change it, we'll change it in all of them. Or if we want to leave it until the CIP committee kind of digs into it. We want to leave it until the CIP committee digs into it.
Are you talking about halfway through that green box? You didn't want-
Yeah, it's just,
How about cost savings from instead of and?
Well, it sounds like your concern is the first sentence.
yeah, it is.
Which is they feel that the saving in capital reserves is the most fiscally responsible way to plan for large future expenditures. I think Scott maybe has a perspective that it might not be, that
Correct.
bonding might be the most fiscally responsible,
Or a combination.
or a combination.
Yeah.
So.
But it's probably too much to add here and put in the recommendation for the other warrant article. Yeah.
Okay, that works.
Or it could just modify it by saying, we feel that capital reserve accounts are financially responsible in a way to plan for future expenditures.
Yeah.
Just
you
take
could
the
do that.
specificity out of that.
Capital reserve accounts are a fiscally,
Our fiscally responsible way.
are a fiscally responsible way to plan for large
Yeah,
future
I
expenditures.
like that.
And we'll do that with all of them.
Yeah, that sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay. Municipal facilities capital reserve, so important to take an organized approach to facility maintenance activities. They feel confident the town has done this with the new facility care and maintenance plans. It will be important for the community to fund this plan in order to avoid a continued backlog of deferred maintenance, especially in critical facilities such as the public safety building. Okay, police equipment capital reserve unanimously recommended. They feel that saving capital reserve accounts are fiscally responsible ways to plan. So I got to change the rest of the grammar there. But anyways, you know what I mean? Planned purchase from this capital reserve essential for the operations of the department should not be referred. In that 2019-2020, when body worn cameras were proposed and approved, the advisory budget committee recognized that the equipment had a 5-year lifespan and the community would have a significant cost to replace the equipment in 2025. Instead of having a large expenditure, the community has approved annual contributions to this capital reserve account. The next significant purchase is the mobile data terminal, MDT, or laptop purchase in 2027. There's a trailing parentheses there. This process is precisely the intended utilization of this fund.
I don't think you need that sentence.
The last one?
Yeah.
Okay. I saw a nod.
Yeah,
Bill Peter,
I would agree.
I'm on page 14. Emergency communication upgrades, unanimously recommended. They feel that capital reserves are a fiscally responsible way to save for large future expenditures. Residents have been saving for essential radio improvements for nearly 20 years in Barrington. In 2022 and then in 2024-25, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent bringing Barrington's radio infrastructure up to date. These planned purchases from this capital reserve are essential for reliable emergency communications and should not be deferred. Each year, the Advisory Budget Committee reviews updated plans for each capital reserve account and challenge town staff to find cost savings and alternative purchase and replacement options. This year's contribution is lower than recent years since most of the planned projects have been completed, and focus now is saving for an additional repeater in the future. It will be important to continue saving for medium and long something.
Whoops.
You could,
Do we need that sentence?
yeah, I was just gonna say.
We don't need that sentence.
That's an easy
Yeah,
solution.
exactly.
An excellent plan.
All right. Bridge and culvert capital reserve unanimously recommended. They feel saving capital reserves are a way to save for future expenditures. Planned purchases from this capital reserve are essential for infrastructure safety and should not be deferred. Each year, Advisory Budget Committee reviews updated plans for each capital reserve account and challenge town staff to find cost savings, alternative purchase, and replacement options. This year, ABC felt that the annual contribution could be lower than recent years due to the available balance and the likelihood that upcoming projects will require separate bond authority due to their higher costs. The ABC recognizes the importance of funding the engineering phase of these projects to make them shovel ready for potential grant funding.
Perfect, I think.
Good.
Transfer station, unanimously recommended. They feel saving capital reserves is a way to save.
Can I, it's too late, but this is FEMA funds, right? Sorry. And FEMA's probably going to be giving out fewer matches, right? So.
Oh, bridge and culvert?
Yeah,
I mean, we've had FEMA funds twice in the last 15 years.
okay.
Yeah. The Lakeside Oaks culverts and the Young Road culvert are the two FEMA funded projects. I don't even know if there's one before that.
Not that I recall.
Yeah.
Okay.
Guess it's the state who's been doing the,
Yeah, State Aid Bridge, which, I mean, it's
Right.
federal funds, but it's federal highway funds, not
yeah.
FEMA.
Yeah.
But there's been a moratorium on new bridge projects for 8 years.
Yeah,
So, that funding went away long ago. That's not a new.
from the state.
From the state.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we had projects in the pipeline. So transfer station, the recently completed feasibility study establishes priority projects and anticipated costs, which the advisory budget committee would like to see integrated into the capital improvements program. Once integrated, the ABC would like to see a multi-year savings plan to ensure that contributions to this fund are able to cover the planned projects. The planned purchases from this capital reserve are essential. Operations of the department shouldn't be deferred. Each year, the advisory budget committee reviews updated plans for each capital reserve, challenges town staff to find cost savings and alternative purchase and replacement options. Fire and rescue equipment capital reserve unanimously recommended. They feel that saving capital reserves is a fiscally responsible way to plan for future expenditures. The planned purchases from this capital reserve are essential for the operation of the department, shouldn't be deferred. Each year, the advisory budget committee reviews updated plans for each capital reserve account, challenges town staff to find cost savings and alternative purchase replacement options.
I have one, so now that Scott's brought up bonds, is a responsible way instead of the most fiscally responsible.
I'm going to change that in all of them.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
We're gonna read.
Yep, thank you. 18, close library community center capital reserve. So unanimously recommended. They feel it is important to keep the town's accounting and records current, and closing out unused accounts is a great way to do that. Library technology capital reserve, which is contingent on the closure. It's unanimously recommended. They feel that saving capital reserves accounts is a fiscally responsible way to save for large future expenditures. The planned purchases from this capital reserve are essential for the operations of the department, should not be deferred. Each year, advisory budget committee reviews updated plans for each capital reserve account and challenge town staff to find cost savings and alternative purchase replacement options. In 2025, ABC felt that the annual contributions were inadequate to fund the plan presented by the library. The ABC supports closing the library and community center capital reserve, which is the prior article, and using a portion of the balance, $15,000, to add to this capital reserve and fully fund the plan through 2029.
I wouldn't mind adding something there to give them credit that they have also installed solar, which is reducing the overall cost as well.
Probably not appropriate here.
Okay.
I don't think that fits.
No.
I mean, I think you could probably add it to the prior one, close the library community center capital reserve. They feel it's important to keep it up. They feel proud that the library project came in under budget, creating a surplus in this article, while even considering the fact that they fundraised additional scope such as solar.
Yeah, because they could have paid for the new capital as opposed to the new solar array, which should save more money over a longer period of time.
Yep. So I could say they feel.
Which one are we in?
Now I went back to page 18, closing the library community center capital reserve. So we're closing this because it's $28,000 that they didn't spend on the project, that they planned to spend on the project, but they didn't. So the budget committee could say they feel, not proud isn't probably the right word. They feel.
They thank
My feeling is just, I would leave this as is, adding just, I think it's,
About the surplus and the solar.
I mean, that's all
Yeah.
important stuff, but I mean. Just
We've got a couple of perspectives, Mona, Peter.
Sweet.
you care.
I'd leave it as it is.
I'd leave it.
Pardon me?
All right. Well, you'll have to go stump for that in yourself.
No.
You can get a sign made up at
Yeah.
that voting day. Okay, technology capital reserve, we are good with that one, yeah?
Yep.
I'm on page 20. This is police collective bargaining, unanimously recommended. They recognize that law enforcement is a core service in the community and that recruitment and retention is especially challenging through New Hampshire. ABC appreciates the select board's historical commitment to third-party data collection for wage and benefits in comparable communities to ensure we remain competitive and cost conscious. Supporting this article is important for the retention of valuable employees in the police department. Highway transfer. Unanimously recommended. They feel making data-driven decisions for employee total rewards is important. Care and maintenance of our roadways and operations of the transfer station are core services which residents rely on every day. Supporting this article is important for the retention of valuable employees of the highway department and transfer station.
Just to be clear, so if the operating budget gets approved and this doesn't, what happens?
There's no money for the funding, wage increases, or benefit changes for the unions.
Okay. They're not additive?
No, no. State law is clear that collective bargaining, cost items and collective bargaining agreements have to be approved on separate warrant articles, which the opposite could also be true. The operating budget could fail and these articles could pass, and then these employees would be eligible for wage increases and non-union employees wouldn't be, so.
But among the buffers is on the next page, on page 22.
Yep.
To reconsider if they go down.
Which would require a special meeting,
Right.
Which.
Which will cost almost as much.
Yeah,
Contracts.
if both of those articles fail, yeah, I don't know. Well, what I was gonna say is it's $100,000. I don't know how no means no applies to collective bargaining cost items. Like if voters defeated those cost item articles, could the select board take $100,000 from the 2026 budget, cut expenditures elsewhere to still provide wage increases for those employees? I don't know if no means no applies to cost items. I want to say that it doesn't, but I don't know that for sure.
But this does say that there's a cost, but that cost is already in the operating budget.
No, that cost is in this article. Okay. Yep. It's not additive. Well, I guess it is additive to that point then.
Yes,
it adds to the.
Yes, that makes sense. Okay.
Did you figure out, did they already make a recommendation vote on the capital improvement program
I
committee?
didn't see. That was the last meeting.
At the 25th? Was that in your table or was it just the number articles?
It wasn't in the table.
Okay, we need to record a recommendation vote on this one.
Yes.
So this is select board appoint a capital improvement program committee. We talked about this at this group and at least at prior meetings, and I know Mona reaffirmed that today, that there was some interest from members of this group to participate in that process if this passes at town meeting. So I felt like it would be important to have ABC recommendation vote on this. So right now, by default, the planning board serves as the CIP committee. They've got plenty else to worry about with zoning and applications, and they support having a separate committee. And this would allow the select board to appoint that committee. And I think the idea, the vision is to have basically, if not exclusively, but have the ABC take on this process.
My only concern would have been that we're stepping on the toes of the planning board, but that's not the case, right, Scott?
Well, the planning board still owns the CIP, right? This doesn't change
Oh, yeah,
that.
no.
And on November 17th, we had a joint meeting
Yeah.
with the select board and planning board and talked about this, and the planning board supported.
Okay, good.
I think it's a good thing to do.
So motion to recommend this article
Yeah.
I'll make such a motion.
by Bill, seconded by
Second?
Mona.
Shepherd, yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, unanimously recommended. And to that end, the ABC feels it would be very valuable to have a separate committee with significant representation from the ABC focused on our town's future capital needs. This process could take place in late spring and early summer, which is off cycle for the current ABC responsibilities. The capital improvements program could be finalized ahead of the budget development process to improve the preparation and funding of operations and capital needs. Okay?
Yep.
You didn't vote on Keno and prohibit games of chance. If you have questions, you can ask me about it after the meeting. Disabled exemption.
We did that.
Where did I write?
That's it.
I think I wrote down on the table of contents how you voted on that. Oh, where did I vote on that? You unanimously recommended that? Yeah. I think it was unanimously recommended. Yeah, 4-0. So this is unanimously recommended. They feel that the town's consistent review of exemption credit details in order to make data-driven decisions is appropriate. During inflationary periods, the value of income limits changes and limits should be periodically reviewed and updated. Good enough?
Yep.
Okay, so we got a majority and minority here, and these are gonna take a little bit of work. I've got my pen ready. So we'll do majority first.
I don't know.
I'm on going from 75 to 50. So the majority does not recommend this article. And the minority recommends it. So the majority this is I kind of wrote this as not recommending. So this is probably for the minority. You know, Peter would say they feel the level of revenue from recent development projects has resulted in a large balance of the conservation fund, which I can update that.
Yep.
And they feel that this balance is sufficient to fund Conservation Commission's priorities, including Richardson Pond Dam, contributing to conservation projects, maintaining existing properties. And I'd probably add a sentence saying reducing land use change tax would benefit the tax rate. Okay, so the majority feels that conservation is an important priority in Barrington.
And that the Conservation Commission should work with the Waynes Lake Association. Can we even say that?
Let's do that in the next one.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that in the next one, because this doesn't have anything to do with invasive species, although they're connected.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll do that in the next one.
Yeah.
So the majority feels that conservation is an important priority in Barrington. They feel
Somehow say focus on maintaining property.
they feel that the conservation commission should continue.
How about further prioritize?
Yeah, maybe I'll add that as like a directive.
Yeah.
So it can continue to have funding at the level. They are hopeful, they recommend that the Conservation Commission prioritize care and maintenance of existing conserved properties over conservation of new properties? Or equal, prioritize care and maintenance of existing conserved properties in addition to. Yeah.
In addition to, yeah.
Conserving new property. Any more meat on that bone? I'll read it. The majority feels that conservation is an important priority in Barrington. They feel the Conservation Commission should continue to have funding at the current level. They recommend that the Conservation Commission prioritize care and maintenance of existing conserved properties in addition to conserving new properties. Enough?
Yep, I think.
Okay, so this one is unanimous no. And so so far I have, they feel that this is not the appropriate year to establish new funds and additional ongoing financial commitments. The state should provide support for public waters. And then do you want me to add here, they recommend conversations between the Conservation Commission and lake associations?
Yes.
And I guess, why couldn't Conservation Commission do this with?
They can.
Right.
Right, so You have a bunch of money.
It's the Lake Associations that's asking for it. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
So
But
they
the Lake
recommend,
Association could ask the Conservation
Right.
Commission, right?
they recommend conversations and cooperation with the Conservation Commission.
Yep.
And a detailed plan for, because somebody said more details I wrote down earlier, a detailed plan for
Implementation.
implementation. Nice. Detailed plan for implementation and ongoing funding. Yeah, and ongoing funding. Because there's concern like, okay, this is good this year, but what are we gonna do in future years? Okay. We're almost there, folks. Okay, so we have Service Connect Total Disability is 2-2. So yeah, this is gonna be weird because we're gonna say that you don't recommend it. Because to recommend it, you'd need a majority, but it's gonna be like equal. So we're gonna say, and won't be majority, minority, it'll be those
Say
who,
what it is,
well, I will,
Yeah.
yeah. But all of that won't be in the warrant article. In the warrant article, it'll just say, this article is not recommended by the Advisory Budget Committee, not recommended for approval by the Advisory Budget Committee by a vote of 2-2. But then in here, I'll say, those who do not recommend approval of this article feel that Barrington's existing credit level is generous, appropriate,
adequate.
in comparison to or considering the state
I
and
think
county
in
averages.
comparison to-
Get that, or I just leave it, it's appropriate.
Do you want a reference?
My vote was because I thought we were appropriate relative to those other numbers.
Do you oppose including that? Okay. In comparison to the county and state averages. So those who do not recommend approval of this article feel that Barrington's existing credit level is appropriate in comparison to the county and state averages. You sure?
Sure.
All right, not twisting your arm here. Okay.
Peter's pulling, he's yanking my arm here.
Those
I was kicking him
who
under the counter.
recommend approval feel that limited impact, gave a lot to their country.
Yeah.
Can I change my
I'll
vote?
let you
No.
wordsmith it. No,
Well, so this is what, so
they
Dan
have
and-
given a lot to their country and deserve to have an expanded credit.
okay, that the eligible credit recipients have given, it's like saying a lot, given what's a way to say given a lot without, given a lot sounds too casual.
Significant sacrifice.
Yes, have made a significant
Is
sacrifice.
that right?
Great work, Peter.
Yeah, I try to support the opposing votes.
You're so generous.
I like to think so, Scott.
And did I hear the word deserve and are deserving of
Sure.
an increased credit and are deserving of an increased credit? Do you want me to say to the new maximum allowed by the state
Before you were around.
or just
Yeah,
period?
that's fine.
Okay, credit to the new
And
max
I voted against it. There was a guy with a cane who was shaking
allowed
it, screaming at me.
by the state. Yep, I remember that. So the woman who has petitioned this article, I've talked to her for honestly a few hours at this point, and it's not uncommon. You know, people want to do something, they want to get involved, but there's a big learning curve. And so at one point in our first conversation, she said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, you know, I'm the town administrator." She said, "Why are you helping me?" I was like, well, that's my job. She said, well, do you support this? Like, do you think this is a good idea? I was like, well, that's irrelevant. That doesn't matter. My job is to have good government in Barrington. My job is to make sure that if somebody wants to do government, which petitioning a warrant article is doing government, is that that you have all the tools and resources to do it appropriately. And the residents get to decide. But anyways, in our conversations, I think there's I think it's easy with some of these types of questions, ballot questions, to make it gets emotional. It gets emotional feeling, and the select board, for its purpose, they take a pretty objective approach to exemptions and credits. They're not making emotional decisions or recommendations. And what I try to explain to folks is that the residents get to decide for a reason, right? Like, shaking a cane at somebody because they disagree isn't an appropriate response. The appropriate response is the residents get to decide if this is, if they can afford this, or if this is appropriate, or whatever else. They get to pull the curtain close and vote. Just because a select board member doesn't recommend it doesn't even necessarily mean that they will or won't vote for it, or doesn't mean that that they don't support or wouldn't support the outcome if majority of residents vote for it, And so it's sometimes it's hard with articles that touch in the emotion to kind of separate the emotion out. But because this individual was concerned about the tax rate impact, I think she is concerned that folks won't vote for this article because it will cost money. And so we spent a lot of time talking about the tax rate impact and how it works and how, each of those, well, from our earlier conversation, those conversations are difficult anyways,
Right.
but, and at one point I said, I think it's probably not worth trying to defend how limited of a tax rate impact it will be. Just say why you think it's a good idea. You don't need to have an answer for somebody. It does cost money. And I think back to the library when it was, this is just a cup of coffee twice a day, or whatever whatever the analogy was to like how much something costs. That can be disingenuous because you have no idea somebody's financial circumstances, right? So like somebody who can't ever afford to get a cup of coffee, like, yeah, hey, sorry, like I don't care that's a cup of coffee a week because I can't afford that anyways. But so if you just say like, hey, this is why I think it's a good idea. But I think the political discourse is just so heightened right now. So people are just like ready to just defend and fight. And so
How did the board vote on that?
the shaking the cane, it just triggered me. 4-1, not to recommend. No. So Dan voted to recommend.
Is there a turnover in this group next year? This year, 2026?
I think I'm up this year.
I think we have, I think we have a few members, maybe as many as 3.
Because I gather there are people who are really getting knowledgeable enough who may want to join.
Yeah, and so I have a spare binder for this year's process. I think we've been very successful, and Farida, I think, is the most recent good example. Bringing somebody on as an alternate, during the process, and giving them exposed. I mean, during discussions, everybody's treated as equal member kind of thing.
Check the pension benefits?
John Morris always advocated for a tax break, but
Yes.
he didn't save us enough money, not for lack of trying, but
He was a great addition.
He was terrific.
I really liked
Some people are really looking. They're going back, looking what we're talking about and discussing it.
I love it.
I do too.
I love it. I'm sincere when I say this to anybody, but you all know that I love talking about this stuff. And so, and even folks who, who are really upset or like, I want everybody to have access to the information and know. If they think differently, by all means, but like, so yeah, send anybody my way that wants to talk about this stuff or wants to get involved. I think I'm pretty confident actually that I have recruited somebody, a new volunteer to participate in the CIP committee, should that happen. His name is escaping me, Paul. But he's a Swains Lake resident. He retired at his family's seasonal camp, lives there year round now with his wife. And he showed up to a couple of meetings talking about the water level and the projects on the dam and stuff. But anyways, it came up in conversation that he was a longtime resident of Pembroke, and he was on the budget committee in Pembroke for years and years and years. And he has experience in broadcast radio and fundraising and kind of like executive level stuff. And so I said to him, I followed him out of the meeting. He was kind of upset, is why he was here. But I followed him out of the meeting. I said, hey, it sounds like you're involved elsewhere. What would it take to get you involved here? He said, well, you don't want me involved. I was like, why not? He's like, well, I'm upset about things, or I don't like things, or you wouldn't like my perspective. And I was like, hey, pal, listen, what you don't understand is we need everybody. Like we can't be an echo chamber. We can't be a room full of people that all get along and agree, or we should be all get along, but room full of people that all agree.
Yeah, we all agree.
Yeah, we all have to get along, but we don't have to agree. And so, so I had to tenderize the subject a little bit. I talked to him, Paul Hansen, that's his name.
I'll talk to him about it too.
You know him?
No, I don't know.
Oh, okay. But anyways, the last time he called, he was asking for an update, and he said, and I also want to tell you that I'm interested in being involved. And he's like, let me know where you need me. I said, music to my ears. And so we talked about a couple of options, and I said, honestly, given your expertise, we've got something cooking that's new, and I think your experience in Pembroke and outsider perspective might be really valuable to that. And I had suggested the budget committee to him at one point, and I don't think he was thrilled about that idea, although maybe he'll come around to that. Start with the CIP committee. But yeah, great guy. You'll see him at Swains Lake Association meeting probably.
Yeah, I probably have met him.
He lives out on some point. I don't know where.
Some point.
One of those points.
One of those points.
Okay.
I think we're done.
Motion to adjourn?
Okay,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.